TEFL students, in this chapter your book talks about the importance of culture and how culture has implications for the classroom and how you manage your classroom. I think this is a great topic. It's worth reading perhaps a couple times. In this little talk, I'm going to move beyond how culture has implications for classroom and talk about the teaching of culture inside your classroom. When you're teaching adults, you want to make sure that they are not only linguistically competent in reading, writing, listening, all the things your book will talk about, but also culturally competent. In order to successfully communicate, you need to have both of those. Ways to address that could be simply overtly reading about deep culture. Naturally, we want it to be level appropriate, but overtly reading about some of the things your book talks about on deep culture. Also, and perhaps even more successful, would be the idea of keeping it in the back of your mind and drawing attention to it as it comes up in your materials in your textbook. For instance, if you have an audio that has people communicating, perhaps you have relationships, a boss and an employee, or a daughter and a father, and you draw your students' attention to some of the cultural things that are going on in the video, or you pay attention to the body language in the video. So just keeping culture in the back of your mind and making sure that you address, maybe not every day, but you making your students more aware of some of the differences that exist so that they can be culturally competent. Now, it's very important that you teach culture in a way that is neutral and professional, and that you don't address it in a way that is, it's not about agreement, it's not about, trying to make any kinds of arguments this way or that way, of course. We want to make sure that we tell our adult students, because they are able to understand that the reason we're having this discussion about whatever cultural element is because you want them to be successful in communication with people from that culture. And that's why we're talking about the topic. At least in my case, that is what has helped me in dealing with sometimes those little difficult topics that deal with cultural differences. It's an exciting topic and your students will enjoy it, but we want to make sure that we address it in a very professional, neutral way. I want to move on a little bit to those of you who will be working with children. Teaching children and the idea of culture is going to be very different than if you are teaching adults. One of the main reasons for that is children are still developing their idea of what their own culture is, what is appropriate, what are the different elements that go into their own culture. They're unlike my adult students who already have a cultural identity, already understand the social norms. And so now I'm making them more successful by adding another set of cultures that they can be successful in. That's my goal, right? So they can decide and be culturally competent in both of them. For children, however, because they're still developing, it's a little bit different the way that you teach culture. In essence, you want to be very careful that what culture is wonderful and you can talk about it and so forth, but you want to make sure that you don't do anything that may create cultural troubles for them in their own culture. So the way that culture is addressed for children, depending on their age, is going to be different because I'm going to consider the fact that I don't want to create confusion in their minds because maybe they're not quite ready yet to separate those two into different cultures. So that's just something I want you to think about. Culture is a really wonderful thing in the classroom to talk about. It's exciting. It's all of these great things. I just want to make sure that you maybe consider a couple extra things when teaching in your classroom. Thank you.